We're going to talk about how to connect the pericardial box to the cardiac surgery simulator. And what I've got in front of me are some of the tubes that will connect the device to the pericardial box. The reinforced tube has an end on it that will only go into the pericardial, or into the CSS, and then two ends that will connect to the cannulas that inflate the balloon in the left ventricle and the right ventricle. This tubing is reinforced, and I'll show you in a moment how to hook that up. There are two tubes that are called fill tubes. They have only one end on them, and they're the 1/4 inch end. They will connect to the drains on the cardiac surgery simulator. They will be used to fill blood into the reservoir of the machine. This is the manifold which will hook up to the machine, which will enable blood to be recirculated through all the different tubes and connections within the machine to prepare it to be connected to the pericardial box. Now at this point I'm going to move and show you the spots these tubes are hooked up to as a first step. The air tube is connected to the CSS in a labeled air. It pops in. We'll connect this end to the pericardial box after we're set. This tube, the air tube, can be hooked up at any point. The two fill tubes are hooked down here at the suction drain, and they are 1/4 inch quick connects, and both of these tubes are connected to a pump inside the machine, which is a suction pump, and it essentially will suck the blood out of the container that you have it in and fill the machine. We'll turn that on in just a second. When the computer is opened up, you go to the kind heart logo, double click it, and it will open the controls. And what we're going to do is to prime the device. I'm going to fill the reservoir. I click that. The reminder will come up and it will say attach refill tubes, which we did in the prior section. So I'm going to click OK, and it's going to start filling. Now if you'll look down here, you can see the blood filling the reservoir of the device. This will go, until it is completely full of the blood out of that container. The next step is to fill all the tubes inside the device, and it's done with this, what's called a manifold. I'm going to disconnect the air tube for the moment so that you can see the connections for the manifold. The first portion of this particular step is to disconnect the fill tubes, because we filled the device, the reservoir is full of blood. And then the connections to these tubes are labeled, but the way this manifold is built, you go from the top down. The inferior cava is first, the aortic root second, the arterial side of the aortic loop is next, cardioplegia here. This is a 1/4 inch connector, so you can't connect it to the wrong thing. This is the inferior vena cava, or the venous side of the AV loop. This goes on to the clean out, and these two go onto the drain. Now at that point, this manifold is hooked up. The device is going to move blood through the manifold and fill all the tubes inside the device. At this point we're ready. We filled the reservoir. The message that we got here told us that it was out of blood before we filled it. We filled it now, so you can come down and clear the message log. And on the prime side, we're going to hit internal priming. It's going to tell us to remove the refill tubes, which we've done, and attach the priming manifold, which we've done. So you click OK, and the device starts. And it'll go through an internal sequence where it will fill all of the different tubes inside the machine. The reservoir is now full, and what we're going to do now is to click on the internal priming. When you click on it on the computer, it'll say, have you taken the refill tubes out and hooked the manifold, which we've done. And we're going to turn it on. And at this point, the internal workings of the machine will begin to fill the tubes in the machine. At this point, these tubes over here will fill, and they will ultimately wind up filling all the tubes both inside the machine as well as the connector. This process will take several minutes, and then we'll come back and turn on the, or connect the tubes that connect to the pericardial box. This is the collection of tubes that will be used to hook the pericardial box to the CSS. I'm going to connect these things sequentially, but I want to discuss them first. This connecting tube connects to the aortic root and the superior vena cava. There's an H line in here that is a small diameter line. The aortic root itself will be filled and pressurized, and a portion of blood will bleed off into the superior caval line, which will go over and partially fill the right heart through the superior cava. This is the inferior vena cava line, and it will hook to the box as well as to the CSS. This line is the aortic loop, and there will be an arterial side and a venous side that will simulate bypass. These two this tube has two ends. One connects to the pericardial box, and the other connects to the basing drain on the CSS. This tube is the wall sucker or the discard sucker. It will connect to the bottom suction and is used as a field sucker. There are three steps to connect the CSS to the pericardial box. The first is to remove the priming manifold and set it aside. We will use the priming manifold again during the clean-out period. But sequentially, each one of these is removed. The quick connects prevent drainage. It'll be set aside. This tube has three connectors, one of which goes to the CSS, and it goes to what's called the aortic root. The other end of this connector will connect to the pericardial box, to the cava, as well as the aortic root. The next line that's connected is the inferior caval line, and it connects to the inferior cava here. The other end will connect to the inferior cava on the pericardial box. This next is a loop. This loop is the aortic venous loop that will be used for bypass. The arterial end is connected to the arterial side of the CSS. This is a continuous loop. When the device is primed, when this line is primed, you'll see the blood moving through this loop. The next is the pericardial box. It's connected here. This end will be connected to the pericardial box. And the final connection is the field sucker, which will be connected there. At this point, we're ready to connect to the pericardial box. We're going to connect the CSS now to the pericardial box. If you'll recall, I removed this air connector. I'm going to reconnect it and put it out of the way. Now, as you look at these connections here, this is the inferior vena cava connection, and it comes up to the pericardial box and is connected to the inferior vena cava connector on the pericardial box. The next is the aortic root. This one has a double connection at the heart, at the pericardial box level. The primary connection is to the aortic root, and the secondary connection is to the superior vena cava. This is the secondary connection that connects to the vena cava here, and this is the aortic root that connects directly to the aorta. As we come down this collection of tubes on the CSS, this is the aortic venous loop, or the arterial venous loop. It's laid down on the mannequin around the pericardial box. The next connection is the pericardial drain, and that pericardial drain is connected to the pericardial box. This will drain the fluid that appears in the pericardial box. And at this point, we're fully connected as far as the CSS to the pericardial box is concerned. Our next step will be to prime each one of these lines sequentially, and that'll be done off of the computer. The final connection between the pericardial box is the air tube, the air drive, which inflates the balloons in the right ventricle and left ventricle. We've connected it here, and then these 2 1/4-inch connectors connect to the right and the left ventricle balloons on the box. At this point, the heart will begin to move because air is filling these balloons and animating the heart. After the air is connected to the balloons, you can see that it has animated the heart. The heart's now moving. None of the vessels are full and there's no blood in the system yet, but this is what the heart will look like once it's connected to the air drive. Okay, now at this point, what we're going to do is we've done internal priming and we've done aortic, or we're going to prime the aortic loop external. I'm going to hit this, and the pump inside the machine is going to fill the aortic line. And you'll see it coming up here. It's coming across, filling up the cable side, filling up the heart, and filling up the blood vessels in the heart. There's blood that's coming through the pericardial drain. The next thing we're going to prime is the inferior vena cava. And I'll click the external priming of the inferior vena cava, and you'll see the pump fill the cava. It will go around, fill the cava, it'll come out the right ventricle and out the pulmonary artery and drain back into the pericardial box. Once it's finished doing that, it will shut off, and then we're going to prime the AV loop. You can see that priming here going around. Once that priming has been done, the machine will recognize that and shut off. Once that's happened, the only thing else on the drop down is cardioplegia priming. We're not going to do that right now. So at this point, we're ready to go to simulate. I'll click the simulate drop down, and we will hit begin circulation. At that point, the machine will replicate heart function. There are a couple of points to be made here. This is the pulmonary artery, and this, where I have my finger, is the tube. It is stenting open the pericardium, and that means that the pulmonary artery completely empties. If I push that stent, that tube, down inside the pericardium, it will tighten up around the pericardium, and you see the pulmonary artery fill. There's one other portion of the heart that fills, and that's the left atrium. If there is a little bit of aortic insufficiency, blood will come back into the left ventricle and fill. It's got no place to go, so that when the left atrium fills like it is here, you're going to have to make a small incision in the left atrium that empties the blood from the left atrium. It will go into the pericardium and then drain through the inferior-most pericardial drain, drop into the pericardial box, where it'll be scavenged by the pericardial drain. So at this point, you've connected the CSS to the heart, we've animated the heart, and the heart's now moving. This is a video through the window of the box. This drain here that's falling straight down is coming from the pericardium. Any blood that connects in the pericardium will drip into the pericardial box. The other straight down is from the pulmonary artery. That's venting the right heart. The other stream that you're seeing here is coming from the junction between the inferior vena cava and the push-to-connect connector. That usually implies that the connector is not fully engaged. The pericardial windows here, the pericardial box windows, enable you to look inside and see what's going on. That leak right there could cause trouble long term. So when you see that kind of leak, it's useful to stop the machine, hit pause, lift up the pericardial platform and re-engage that tube, which I'll do right now. And sure enough, it was loose. You can put the pericardial platform back in place and just simply hit continue. That leak is still present. Some of the things that can cause that are that the tube itself is not, it's deformed to a certain extent. I think being aware of this issue will enable you to manage it. In any case, that's how you hook the CSS up to the heart.